Hi, everybody. We are gonna start rolling here in just a few minutes. I see we've got a bunch of people all filing in and joining the room, which is great. My name is Chaden Case. I'm the Director of Operations and Donor Relations here at Lead Them Home. We also have on the line with us Meg Botts, our Director of Communication and Creative Design.
Hi, thanks everyone for joining us today.
And we're going to introduce Bill in just 1 second. I just want to go through a couple housekeeping things while we're waiting for some more people to join us and get all their settings configured. Obviously, the first thing out of the gate, we want to say thanks for being here. And please make sure you've got your volume set to a comfortable level so that you don't miss anything while we're presenting to you. Additionally, just like we would ask at any posture shift event, we appreciate your understanding and your compliance with not recording this session today. We'll try to make this as informative a time as we can and try to get to as many questions and everything as we can. On that note, you will notice if you mouse over your screen that some buttons pop up at the bottom of the window. One of them is called Q&A. If you click on Q&A, you'll be able to type a question to us. And we want you to do that at any point during this meeting. Meg and I are going to be paying attention to those questions as they come in and I'm kind of queuing up a Q&A session in the second half hour of our meeting. So as soon as you have a question that pops into your mind, feel free to send it to us. And we want to honor your time. We want to wrap up right at the end of this hour. So as soon as you think of that question, send it to us and we'll get ready to queue that up for the Q&A session in the second half hour, like I said. Meg and I will be acting kind of as mic runners, essentially, so you won't need to actually speak at any point. You'll just be typing those questions to us, and then Meg and I will kind of field them and read them off to Bill in the second half hour. If there's a really complex question or a real personal question, obviously that's something that we can follow up with, at a later time. That said, thanks again so much for being here. This is our first webinar. We've designed this for executive leaders and ministry leaders across the country to, assess whether they want to bring posture shift to their church or ministry. And we're so excited that you're here. With that, I give you Bill Henson.
Thank you, Chaden. Thank you, Meg. And thanks, everyone, for joining us. It's an honor to have you. It's a very cold day all across America. And so it's an honor to spend an hour with you. Hopefully you're in a warm spot. We actually had folks that asked, are we going to cancel the webinar? Because they were not actually able to get to their church today. And so recognize that there may be some folks that are not able to join us today for one reason or another, but we're so thankful for those of you that have joined us. We have over 50 pastors from 22 to 24 states that are with us today. Today we're going to look at an overview of the purpose, the content, and the benefits of posture shift and how it can benefit your ministry team. I'm going to share an outline of the content over about a 30-minute period, and then we're going to save about 30 minutes for Q&A dialogue. As Chaden indicated, when you have a question, write it down immediately. We want to get a backlog of questions so that when it comes to the Q&A time, instead of there being some blank pause time, that we're really immediately going from question to question. So waiting until the Q&A time to submit your question won't allow us to maximize this time for you. We are going to close right at 3 p.m. to honor your time, and that's why we need you to submit your questions. I'm going to open us up in prayer, and we'll get going. Father, thank you for this wonderful day. Thank you that we can be joined together with leaders all across the country. It's such a privilege to be able to share about posture shift and the benefit that it is bringing to many church and ministry leadership teams all across North America. And we thank you for this time. We thank you for the investment of time that folks have made all around America to be with us today. Bless this time, we pray in Christ's name. Amen. Posture shift is a missiological teaching. It's designed to enhance LGBT inclusion and relational care inside the evangelical church. I created Posture Shift in 2008. It's time-tested. It's survived countless theological objections. By this point, there's no objection, no question, no accusation that we haven't dealt with, addressed, and fully answered with a strong biblical foundation. Certainly, as we get into LGBT inclusion, there are matters that are very complex, and I'll share more about how we deal with that in a moment. But we're not going to make people into controversies. People are valuable to God, and therefore, when we get to the places of complexity, we're not going to label that heresy. We're not going to label that controversial. We're not going to dehumanize people. We're going to realize these are our children. And if they're not our children, they're the children that God has placed on our watch. They could be the kids of families in our congregations or our ministries. They could be the children of pastors, of elders. So that we're talking about our family members. We're talking about friends. We're talking about people that are like a family to us. Over time, Posture Shift has proven to be biblically sound, God-honoring, and gospel-elevating teaching. It has transformed church leadership teams all across North America. Over 50,000 church leaders have experienced Posture Shift in North America, and in 2018, we actually expanded into South America. In South America, we're actually teaching Posture Shift in Spanish, and we now have a Posture Shift course handbook that's available in Spanish. You can obtain our course handbook in English or Spanish at leadthemhome.org. If you want the Spanish version, I think you actually need to email us and we'll get that to you on demand. But the English version is readily available on our website. Many of you know that we released the second edition of Guiding Families in 2018. It's our first direct care publication that's flowing from a decade of work with Posture Shift and 14 years of overall experience in caring for LGBT people and their families since our inception in 2006. It was released in June 2018, and already there are nearly 60,000 copies in print. We've sold a lot on our website, but we have a couple of distribution partners that have that account for the majority of the copies in print today. One ministry partner actually has 50,000 copies. It's a national ministry. They decided this is an issue of justice. They've got to equip their team. They signed a distribution agreement for the printing of 50,000 copies of Guiding Families. And all 50,000 of those copies have been distributed at no cost to their members. So very, very wonderful things are going on with both Posture Shift and Guiding Families, our newest publication. Ultimately, Posture Shift was created to achieve our vision and our missional goals. Our vision is very simple: loving LGBT people in the church. Our 4 missional goals are easy to say, not always easy to actually accomplish or live out. We want to enhance church inclusion for LGBT people. We want to increase family acceptance that they experience. In other words, we want to make church and home safe for LGBT people. Children, teens, young adults, LGBT folks of all ages. Our third vision principle: protect against victimization. We have to do justice on matters that lead to youth homelessness, that lead to bullying. And then finally, our fourth vision principle or missional goal: nourish faith identity. A gospel of exclusion has zero power to reach people who have already been banished by their families and by churches. So a gospel of rejection, exclusion, it has no power to reveal the presence of Christ living in us, postured toward people whom God loves. So we have to enhance church inclusion, increase family acceptance, protect against victimization in order to have a shot at nourishing faith identity in LGBT people's lives. The teaching objectives for Posture Shift are very important. We're proposing a missiological framework that will set us free from a lot of hang-ups that disable us, that slow us down, that cause so much complexity that they just stop our efforts altogether. It will free us up from that logjam and mobilize us, equip us to improve care and inclusion for LGBT folks. Now, importantly, when I started Lead Them Home in 2006, it became very apparent that, wow, I can continue to care for a stream of individuals who are being hurt by their families and by their churches, or we've got to do something at a higher level. We've got to equip church leadership teams to send messages from their pulpits that will actually equip their congregation, that will make families safer and churches safer, pastoral teams safer. So that's when it became clear we're going to have a teaching program for church leaders. Now, in the early stages of creating Posture Shift, it wasn't done through a missiological framework. It was done simply through the framework of basically just be more kind, just be more thoughtful. It was kind of a general call of just look like Jesus in a sense. Do what Jesus would do. And guess how much success we had with that? Zero. Because once the complexity arose, everything shut down. It's interesting that I had taken, and many of you have taken, I know because when I teach Posture Shift, I ask folks to raise their hand if they've been through the Perspectives in World Missions course, and many of you have. It changed my life. I've spent almost all of my Christian life, even my pre-born again Christian life, being involved in missions. So I've always been involved in missions. But taking the Perspectives in World Missions course was very transformative in how I saw the church's reach to LGBT people, or rather the lack thereof. The moment that we proposed a missiological framework, boom, open doors everywhere, blind spots removed, the disabling effect when complexity rises, it went away. People started navigating the tension of all of the complexity a lot better. Leaders started being much more creative in finding a way to say yes rather than no, no, not you, no, no, no. So proposing a missiological framework, even in 2019, is what sets leadership teams free to actually engage the complexity with great creativity and organic ideas that are coming up within their team locally. We don't have the answers for everyone. Sometimes we're equipping folks to be set free to engage people where they are as they are, and then leadership teams are coming up with all kinds of creative ideas on their own about how to do that. That's the first teaching objective. The second one, there are 7. The second teaching objective is to prove that radical love can exist across the belief spectrum. Part of the growth of Posture Shift in the last 4 years has been that people assume that if you have a traditional view, you actually hate people, that you don't actually have a capacity to love people. And this can't be true. If love demanded unity and belief, every marriage would fail, every corporate board would break down. Love endures belief gaps in our everyday world, both in the religious world and in the secular world, every day. It's called living in this world and trying to make progress with other human beings. So we've got to demonstrate how radical love can exist across the belief spectrum. In other words, we've got to create a new church history that has never existed. We've got to demonstrate that those that hold to a traditional view are actually capable of showing dramatic radical love for LGBT people where they are as they are. The third teaching objective, we've got to improve our language skills. Hey, every missionary, and let me just say this about being a missionary. When we talk about being a missionary to a marginalized people group or to any other people group, oftentimes it can come across as an othering of individuals, and that's simply not true. I am a father, and as a father, I'm a missionary to my own children. So this is about honoring people, not othering them. So if we're going to honor them, we have to learn to speak their language. And as a father, I have to learn to speak the language of a next generation of teenagers. And in all the teenagers that Lead Them Home has cared for over the last 14 years, absolutely, I've had to learn to speak a different language in order to connect with them where they are, as they are. Missionaries don't demand that people come our way. Missionaries lay down our lives and go to people where they are, as they are. So as you can imagine, as many of you are aware, there are a lot of language phrases, cliches, statements, words that we resort to over and over and over again. Lifestyle choice, gay lifestyle, love the sinner, hate the sin, why do you choose this? You know, we've got all these things that we resort to. And all of these things create a trigger or trigger fear in LGBT people that actually causes them to flee from us. So every missionary understands if you don't have proximity to a marginalized people group, you do not have a capacity to share the gospel. So we've got to address accessible language that will minimize offense and minimize the rate at which we trigger LGBT people to feel judged or to feel fear of us even. The fourth vision principle, we've got to learn to nourish rather than chop at the roots of spiritual faith. Right now there are some voices in the evangelical world that will say all kinds of things. Oh, if you're living a celibate life, you have to call that singleness, not celibacy. Oh, if you come to Christ and you're LGBT, you can no longer say that you're gay. And for a gay individual, if it was demanded that they stop saying they're gay, they literally would feel like they're breaking a commandment, do not lie. So for them, they don't want to say they're not gay if they still are attracted to the same gender, because for them, that would be a lie. It's not so much a spiritual identity claim, I am a gay Christian, as much as it is them trying to tell the truth. Ooh, I have come to Christ, but I also am still gay. We don't want to force people to carry extra weight after they come to Christ and even before they come to Christ. We want to nourish spiritual roots of faith in people where they are, as they are. Importantly, we want to enhance care to those geared to anticipate condemnation. This is the fifth teaching objective. If we can't enhance care, sensitive care, thoughtful care, compassionate care, long-term walking with no matter what, if we can't do that for folks that highly anticipate condemnation, we're not going to reach people and we're not going to make them safe. The sixth teaching objective is to lower suicide and homelessness risk factors for gay youth. In Posture Shift, you absolutely will not leave it without understanding. You have to go to your pulpits, whether that's to an entire congregation, whether it's at a training for life community or Bible study leaders, whether it's your youth leaders. You have to go and you have to declare that family rejection is not the answer when your child, it comes out to you as LGBT. If you reject your child could be, they make up 5 to 7% of their population group as gay teenagers, but they account for 20 to 40% of homeless youth in America. And if we don't do something about family rejection, we cannot create a new church history that has never existed. And we certainly have to work to lower suicide and to declare there are no gay jokes that are funny in this congregation, and there's absolutely no bullying that's going to be permitted in this congregation. The seventh principle or teaching objective is we're not on this webinar, and I haven't taught 50,000 church leaders because we suddenly decided to love LGBT people. The reality is we're at a leadership crisis moment. And if we don't learn to radically love LGBT people, we fail to reach the entire next generation. So the next generation will not have anything to do with a church that hates, that excludes, that finds all kinds of reasons to say to LGBT folks, no, no, not you, no, no, no. So this is a wider issue. And importantly, there's an opportunity here. If we actually dive into Posture Shift and implement it and learn to radically love LGBT people, we will be reaching an entire next generation for Christ that largely is checking out of the evangelical church. So there's a tremendous opportunity here that, yes, has to do with LGBT people, but it extends to an entire younger generation. It's really, really important. I just want to share briefly a content overview. In part one of Posture Shift, we go through an introduction of Lead Them Home, our ministry, the people we reach, some things that we're going to be discussing throughout the teaching. And then we dive into a biblical apologetic. This biblical apologetic is really, really critical. In other words, I could say all day long, hey, missionaries reach people, go do it. And you know what? When it gets complex, people will interpret it as controversial and they will shut down because there's not a biblical foundation for the teaching. So we go through a biblical apologetic, and this is fun because what we'll do is lead them home. I'll present our apologetic, a 3-step apologetic, but then we go to small group table time where leaders ultimately discuss at individual tables and come up with their own examples from Scripture of what is the biblical foundation for the concept of shifting our posture in order to radically love people in God's name. How can we do that in a way that still honors God? And so through that table time, over the years, it's been so awesome. We've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples that have come from both the Old Testament and the New Testament that set a firm biblical foundation for the concept of posture shift. It does not neuter the gospel. It is not a heresy. It's actually deeply, deeply grounded in a biblical foundation. If we don't get that apologetic on the front end, we don't have buy-in. And if we don't have buy-in, there will be no progress. I'm happy to report to you that we have a 98% buy-in rate once that biblical apologetic is on the table. If we leave the biblical apologetic out of the teaching, the buy-in rate, there's still compelling teaching information that will get folks there, but that buy-in rate will go down to about 80%. So the biblical apologetic is really, really important. And you as leaders, when we train your team, you'll be part of that. The part 2 is a missiological education. Basically, we're looking at LGBT people as a people group, as a marginalized people group. They're not unreached or unengaged in the sense that these are often our family, friends, neighbors, coworkers, people that live in our communities, maybe even attend our churches, maybe are members of our churches, who speak our language, who live in our culture. We have so much in common, yet we're so far away from each other. So in the missiological education, we'll actually be looking at LGBT history, the culture of being gay, and by that I do not mean effeminacy or style per se. What I mean is, what is it like to grow up LGBT in our world today? And then we'll look at language issues, language don'ts. The good news is there are not language do's. In other words, you don't have to actually learn an entirely new language per se to relate to LGBT people. All we have to do is extract exclusionary, judgmental, condemning language, cliches out of our very, very common language mistakes that we make. And once we do that, we can simply use authentic language to engage people where they are as they are. So the implementation piece on the language, in the area of language, is very easy. It's just extracting the stuff that offends and then being authentic in the honoring questions that we ask. Importantly, in that teaching of the language section, it's going to become clear that language is not just what we say. It is the questions we ask that allow us to be a listener and a learner and allow others to tell the story of their lives. And we can do that by asking honoring questions. But as we ask honoring questions and we're listening, then language is also our body language, our facial expressions, our eye contact, the things that say either I'm listening to you and I care about you, or evangelical freeze face, you're freaking me out. So language is really, really critical. Oh, by the way, that's not a gay thing. That's a human thing. In other words, all kinds of people can know when we're uncomfortable with them by our body language, our facial expressions, and the words that we retreat to. In this area, we are going to have to position ourselves as listeners, learners, asking honoring questions, then always being in the role of being a teacher and a teller. In part 3, this is for executive leaders. We cover an inclusion model that accomplishes the missional goal of enhancing church inclusion, but also wraps around it healthy boundaries. And so that's a really important part of the teaching. In our 2-day course, we'll actually cover the inclusion model at the end of day 1 so that folks can talk about it. We'll have some Q&A time, but then we'll share dinner and talk more about it over dinner, and then you can go home, sleep on it, dream about it, come back tomorrow, the next day for day 2 with all the hardest questions you can come up with, and we'll test out this inclusion model to find out whether it works or not. Importantly, the inclusion model is a tool for you. It's not lead them home telling you, you must do this. Sure, we'll set a model that shows things like participation, membership, involvement in the church, experiencing belonging at different levels, and we'll put an ideal model out there of what it would take to reach a marginalized people group. But then from there, you will have to shape that inclusion model that fits within your existing tradition or policies. In other words, there's one church that Lead Them Home works with denominationally at a national level. They are really wanting to do amazing things. But their membership policy, wow, it's 152 years old. And basically the requirements for membership are the same as leadership requirements. Well, guess what? As much as they might want to increase the capability for people to become members, as much as I might want them to, as much as you might want them to, the reality is none of us are going to have the power to change a 152-year-old policy that's now governed by a global church where global leaders are actually originating from places in Africa and other areas of the world that are going to be really, really concerned about where we're going with LGBT folks. So just to say, some of this is complex. Some of you are church plants. You don't have policies that govern membership. You actually can fully allow someone to become a member where they are, as they are. So anyway, inclusion model is not telling anyone what to do. It's a tool that then allows you to work as a leadership team to find out, where do we want to put mission trip members? Where do we want to put mission trip leaders? Where do we want to put a Sunday school teacher? And we'll give a prescriptive on what we think works best for both honoring God and radically loving people, but then based on your policies, your traditions, you'll have to adjust that model. That's why we call it a tool rather than a telling you what to do. In part 4, we have an extensive best practice care plan, and it will give several ideas that will make families and churches safer for LGBT folks. In our 2-day intensives course, we will also cover many case studies. On day 1, we'll have at least 1 case study. Day 2, we'll dive into 4, maybe even 5 case studies. And the case studies are actually going to allow your team to start to implement posture shift. It's going to give you real life stories. These are not made up stories. These are real life scenarios. A married gay couple with a kid comes into a church as a visitor after hearing a Sunday morning message after the Pulse disaster, in which your sermon was very compassionate in extending love to the LGBTQ community. What do you do with that gay couple when they show up? Well, in our case studies, we'll deal with things like that, with feelings of teenagers experiencing rejection in the church, how to deal with teens that are suicidal, and how to cast a vision that would allow teens to feel safe sharing their story with us rather than hiding their story from us. Importantly, LGBT youth learn about themselves, come out to themselves, if you will, average age 12 and a half. But because of their fear of parents and the church, they will not, on average, come out to their family until 17 and a half years old. So for 5 years of a very important developmental season of their life, they will actually live 5 years fearing their parents and fearing their church rather than being known for what they're experiencing. On our website for executive leaders, we have a publication called Posture Shift Implement Tool. It lays out our inclusion model and also explains how to give a posture shift sermon, how to cast vision of safety for a youth in youth groups, and it also offers a policy driven posture shift model. So let me be clear. I don't want posture shift to be put in writing. I want it to be lived out organically, one person at a time, decisions being made one person at a time. That's what it's designed for. But because there are all kinds of ministries, all kinds of churches that have different ways that they have to operate, some have to operate by policy. So an implement tool, I actually did what I don't want to do. I designed a policy that will operate dynamically based on posture shift principles. It will secure beliefs that are important for many ministries to make sure they're not moving in their beliefs. and it will also allow them to increase their capacity to include. So Implement tool is available on our website for those that are interested. All right, our offerings for Posture Shift. It occurs in an exposure teaching that's up to 3 hours. Oftentimes it's a 2-hour duration. It's great for a wide net reach within a congregation. So let's say on a Wednesday night parent forum, for example, Posture Shift exposure would be great for that. If your church leadership team has zero experience in LGBT outreach and you don't even know that there's a leadership crisis unfolding in this area, you haven't even spotted that it is an issue why you're not reaching the next generation. Maybe you're on the front edge of recognizing that and many of your elders are not even aware of it. Posture Shift exposure could be a great way to get people on board to how important this issue is. We also offer a seminar that goes from 4 to 6 hours in duration. We offer a condensed intensive that's 1 day, 8 hours. And then our most contracted event that we only introduced in 2016, but it's grown rapidly. It's now our _1 event. Posture Shift Intensives course, it's 2 days. Why do we need 2 days? Because because a teaching that might move you does not necessarily equate to helping you live it out or implement it. So our intensives course allows entire leadership teams to experience the training together, to work together toward implementing it, practicing application decisions using Posture Shift principles, and the impact is huge. Literally, we have teams leaving the 2-day course that are immediately living out Posture Shift in their congregation the following Sunday, and with full elder support. And so this is a really, really awesome development. When we first introduced the 2-day course, I was like, yes, we need it, because we've got to get the learning process improved. We've got to get people experienced and drawn into the teaching at a deeper level where they'll actually be able to go live it out rather than just say, oh wow, Posture Shift was great, and then only incremental improvements. We've got to do something. But when we introduced Posture Shift, the 2-day course, it was like, who is ever going to invest 2 days on this? Well, the reality is there are leadership teams all across North America, in Canada, in South America that are absolutely investing 2 days to really make dramatic progress in this area that's really important for us to do. While we're in town serving your team, we can offer other seminars. We might do a 2-day intensive course that's just for your staff and your elders and maybe some senior lay leaders. But while we're in town, we could do a parent forum. We could do a teen forum. We could do a justice-oriented message called Building Justice Bridges. Or we could do a presentation on our Guiding Families resource that could launch a Guiding Families group in your congregation. So just know when we're in town, we can serve in other ways. Now, I'll say that I've got 2 teenagers, an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. So Dad wants to be back home with my family. So oftentimes when I'm traveling, we'll book events back to back to back. So I'll do a lot of training, equip a lot of leaders, and then come back home, be with my family. So that means I do mostly weekday events. However, in a rare exception, if I am there over a weekend, then we could do a congregational message on a Sunday morning as well. All right, the contracting options. You could do a private contract for your team only. You could do a private event with partners, other churches in your area, and maybe that's for financial reasons to say, ooh, on our own, we can't afford this. But with 2 or 3 other churches in our area that we really are nicely aligned with, we could still do a private event, but we could share the expense of that across 2 or 3 or 4 churches. You could do an open registration event. This could be where you offer free attendance for area evangelical leaders, both church and parachurch, or you could charge a small fee to cover meals. In our most popular approach, we offer an open registration event where you actually, we manage the registration, but you tell us what the fee is, and then that fee that individuals pay, it effectively prepays your contract costs. So at the end, we find out how much we pre-collected from the paid registrants, and versus the contract fee, what are the differences we settle for that after the event is over. There's no big cash outlay after Pasha Shift is over. You share that investment across paid registrants, and that's a great way to operate. Now, there's benefits to private trainings, and there's benefits to open registration. Think about this. With open registration, we will do marketing of the event without giving away your identity. We will do marketing of the event nationally. You'll do the marketing in your region or in your city, and together we'll have leaders from all over the country who attend. That can actually play a very important missional strategy role. It's called Citywide Mobilization. In other words, the more that we could reach leaders across an entire city in a 2-day period, the more that it wouldn't matter what church an LGBT person went to, no matter what door they went into, they would be able to be engaged in a more thoughtful way. So this is really important. At a recent Denver event earlier this month, we had 60 leaders, but they were from 11 states. At other events, we've had up to 17 or 18 states represented at a single event. So we'll have folks come from around the country, potentially from around the world. We've had leaders that have flown in from UK, from Europe, from Africa, from China, from Australia and New Zealand to attend Pasha Shift. Maybe some other areas as well that I'm overlooking. But just to say, we're reaching leaders around the world, and Pasha Shift is playing a big role in attracting those leaders to come to our open registration events. All right, so now regarding pricing, we're not going to discuss pricing on this call. If you're interested, we've actually got a website set up. It's postureshift.com/proposal. So you can simply go to postureshift.com/proposal, and if you're interested in moving forward and asking for a proposal, simply go to that website, fill out the form, and we'll get a proposal to you later today or early tomorrow morning. In a Citywide Mobilization event, I just want to give an example. Lincoln, Nebraska, not the largest city, but it is a college town. And in one day, we reached 250 leaders that represented every evangelical church in that community. So literally, Pasha Shift, with local marketing and national marketing, we can reach a lot of leaders. Really, really exciting stuff. All right. At this point, we're going to go to your questions, and then I'll talk about some next steps as we close around 2:55. So we've roughly got about 15 minutes for your question and answer. Chase and Meg, I'll look to you for any questions that have come up so far.
All right. So I'm going to ask the first question. A few people have been asking to run through the learning objectives again, and a couple have also asked if they could have copies of the objectives so that they could bring those to their teams.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to out myself. I've got a large screen TV behind my laptop camera, and this is in a PowerPoint. We'll save that as a PDF, and anyone that requests it will be glad to give you a copy of everything that I've talked about today. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. Okay, so our next question. You mentioned that 5 to 7% of teens identify as gay. Can you give us the source for that stat?
Oh, there's been numerous studies that will demonstrate that the identity rate is all over the map. For example, there's one study that shows that up to 16% of teenagers identify as non-binary, neither male nor female. But that's the same entity that did that study, Williams Institute, has found that above age 25, the number of individuals that identify as non-binary, genderqueer, transgender, 0.6%. So you'll see some rates that are in the 10 to 12% range. Their studies are all over the map. But the problem is there's this Q. There's two Qs. One is queer, but the other is questioning. So there's a developmental period where a lot of teenagers are saying they're questioning or that they're gay or that they might be gay. So you'll see some studies that might show 10 to 12% of youth. But researchers think that the ultimate number of kids that will remain LGBT people, LGBT identified as they get through development, roughly 5 to 7%. And we can when I send out the PDF, we can get you some source data on that. By the way, I want to be clear, there are some more recent studies that at the adult level show that the number of individuals that identify as LGBT could be as low as 3.8 to 4.1%. So just saying, it's all over the map. I try to use a mid-range just to be respectful of the wide range. I don't want to say 3.8% because we're often dealing with teenagers where that rate is much higher.
All right. The next question, Tyler is wondering about approaching leaders in the church who seem hostile to listening in a conversation when you bring up the word gay or homosexuality.
Sure.
How can someone like our attendees who's a leader and wanting to bring posture shift to their team bring up this conversation with other leaders?
Okay, this is an excellent question. So imagine we get asked by a lot of Christian camps, what are we going to do about inclusion of transgender youth? All kinds of complex demands are being made of us. What on earth can we do about this? If we don't include, we could become a media event. If we include only in a certain way that disrespects the child or the teenager, we could become a media event. If we do cater to the requests that are being made of us, we could actually have a backlash from the evangelical community, and we don't have an endowment. We operate every year based on an annual budget. And if we have a backlash, literally we could go bankrupt. So imagine that. So what do I do with them? I say, all right, so we've got to have a training, and the training has to include your board members. It has to include all your staff. Now at the staff level, they're already living this out. They already know what the demands are. They're already engaging youth. They know what to do. Some of the board members, they care about youth deeply. They may not understand how complex it is actually on the operational side. So we got to have those constituents there. But also at the camp level, we've got to find out, what does your funding profile look like? Are there 3 churches in your region that account for 30% of your business across a year? Just as an example. Okay, we need to have representatives from 2 or 3, senior representatives from 2 or 3 of those churches at an event. And then, oh, by the way, what does your funding profile look like in terms of general donors? Are there 10 families that account for 15% of your budget? We've got to get some of those high-end donors at this training as well. So it's about constituent support. So I don't want to sell it to an entire team. I want to sell it to one person, meaning in your context of a local church, Tyler, I want to sell the idea and the need to one elder that can become, in a sense, an ally, see the need and really understand how important this is. So how can that be done? Well, I wouldn't, if they're really opposed to this, I definitely wouldn't give them Guiding Families just as the first step. Guiding Families is a great, great resource that is transforming many, many leaders' hearts. But the hearts that are being transformed are leaders who already have care in their heart for LGBT folks. They're not folks that are radically aligned against LGBT people. Now we have some parents that are radically aligned against LGBT people that then it's suddenly their child, and then they're very, very open to Guiding Families. So just saying that, I want to explain at the high level, of the higher level, we're not reaching the next generation. This is one reason why. In other words, just like I put it through a missiological framework, you as a church leader have to put it through a strategic lens. Hey, look, this is, our insensitivity in this area is actually causing us to lose the next generation. And there's actually a training that's available that could help us become better equipped to respond to families in our congregation. Also, I think casting a vision that this is about kids on our watch, the children of families in our congregation, rather than a community that's out there over there. Somehow, some of the folks that are most opposed to LGBT people are thinking of an us and them, as if we're here, the gay community is over there, they're doing all those really horrible things, and we don't want them to come into our community and introduce ideas that we would disagree with. So we've got to prove that it's a right here, right now matter. It has to do with families in our church. We've got to develop ally support on our leadership team. If it's only one elder that gets on board, that can be key. Just returned from Northern California, where literally it was one elder who said we've got a crisis. And the one elder who said that they've got a crisis because that one elder actually attended our Oakland event in early 2018 with the youth pastor. So the youth pastor on the front line already knew it was a crisis. But getting the rest of the church to recognize that, it was like a brick wall. That elder was the most conservative elder. He was the chairman of the elder board, the most conservative elder on the entire elder board. The youth leader knew exactly who to go and to tap in. Now, if leaders wanted a similar Zoom call to just hear how apostleship can help your team, we could do that, and we could explain some of the basis of the missiological elements, homelessness, bullying rates, the impact of growing up gay, how that results in a lot of family rejection, a lot of suicidality around family rejection, around church exclusion, and see if some hearts can get changed in that way. We rarely do a Zoom call that introduces apostleship to church leaders or a exposure event that doesn't then lead to our two-day event for an entire leadership team. It is very compelling. It's very strongly backed by research, and it begs the question, are we actually going to look like Christ in this world or not? And so, sorry to go on and on, but those are some ideas about what you can do to actually start to build support in a congregation. The one thing I want to give assurance on, if you have a highly resistant team and you lead them home in to do a Zoom call to explain the need, what I'm not going to be doing is shaming church leaders for their blind spots or the slow rate at which they see the need of this. I'm going to present it, and we'll just see what kind of incremental improvement might occur from that. So any help that's needed, contact us, and I'd be happy to help out.
Great. The next question is from Linda. She said, you mentioned apostleship groups or guiding families groups. Can you explain what those are?
Yeah, so this is great. Guiding families is proven to be a radically transformative resource. Just as one example, first of all, it's selling all around the world. We've got individuals that have bought guiding families from, I think it's something like 16 nations, even into the Middle East, into Africa, all over the world. And so guiding families is having a very transformative impact. We actually think guiding families might begin to reach deeper into congregations than even posture shift will. Because when I do posture shift, it's for leadership teams. The idea is Lead Them Home comes in, we train and equip privately, we leave, no one ever knew we were there. You go live it out in your own voice organically in your own congregation. And instead of a guest speaker getting the credit, Jesus gets the credit. How about that? So in other words, your church gets to experience you living out the gospel in a more powerful, more authentic, more effective way. It wasn't because of a guest speaker. It was because you had insights that you started leading your congregation. There's power, there's gospel power, there's God's anointing in that. I don't want the credit for that. I want you as local leaders to get the credit for that. But as you move into that, guiding families could become a dramatic resource. Oh, it could launch a guiding families group that is specifically for the parents of LGBT children. But the way we see guiding families groups is this could become the educational equipping tool that a church uses for its entire faith community. So for example, a guiding families group could be a temporary or short-term study group that's done through life communities. So life communities could have guiding families, how are we going to love LGBT people, as a study guide that's going to run for the first 6 or 8 weeks in spring or summer or fall 2019. So guiding families groups can be a wide spectrum of groups that do a dedicated study. Guiding families groups could also be a leadership team that's like saying, hey, we've been through posture shift, now we want to start to implement it. Oh, let's look through and let's study this resource and let's find out who are we going to be as a faith community, as a local church for LGBT people. Let's study Guiding Families together. Guiding Families is structured in multiple sections, and it has reflection questions, a lot of reflection questions at the end of each section that allow you to process that. So there are many, many different applications for what we call Guiding Families groups. It could be at a leadership level. It could be at a congregational level of equipping the entire body of Christ. It could be specifically for families of LGBT loved ones. And we're actually having groups that have formed around all those three areas.
Excellent.
Maybe have time for one more question so that then I can cover just the next steps. The next steps is going to be very brief. It'll only take about a minute or two. But I would like to at least process one more question before we stop.
Yeah, I think I've got a two-parter. This comes from two different people, again, but I think you should be able to answer both of them in the time we've got left. One individual is asking if during the posture shift course, if you touch on matters of legality and how those kind of play out, whether in the classroom or in a church setting, and then the kind of second question, which is also kind of quick, is whether or not we offer posture shift in Spanish.
So yes, we offer posture shift in Spanish. Josh Proctor is on our team. He is with Christian Missionary Alliance, but he works for us part-time. He's American. He's been stationed in Colombia. He speaks Spanish fluently. He's actually now in Florida, and he's available to present posture shift to Spanish-speaking congregations or church leadership teams, or to actually go into Latin America to present posture shift in Spanish. And again, that comes with the course handbook. On the matter of legality, I'm not an attorney. However, there's a lot of knowledge about the legal aspects of this that have played out over the last 14 years. The different states have different laws regarding public accommodations. Some churches have greater security in that in certain states than other states. There's federal protection at a church level. So for example, I know a parachurch ministry, youth-oriented, that's been around for over 100 years. And they actually restructured all their affiliate ministries all across North America to be church rather than religious nonprofit in order to get that extra protection that they felt like they had. In posture shift, it's a missionary endeavor. So we're not going to spend time going over legal matters in great detail. However, I invite you to bring your general counsel to the meeting. I was very pleased that when I recently did a regional conference event for a denomination, the very first person to follow my 2-day teaching was their general counsel. And that general counsel said, "This is the first time in a decade that I can stand up after hearing a message like that and just say, on the practical, relational level, go live out everything you just heard. And now on the legal side, I'll give you just a few ideas of why we can do that and not get into legal trouble." So you have to rely upon your own legal advice in your own state or your own organization. But I can say we've had breakthroughs in getting to that threshold of having even high-end attorneys not consider posture shift and the ideas we're promoting to get your church into some kind of legal problem. So I'm very happy about that. All right. I'll close with next steps. First, if you're ready to schedule an event, we've got a few openings left in the spring of 2019 and obviously going into fall 2019. I'll be on sabbatical this summer, and so we will not have events largely scheduled over the summer months. But if you're ready to do that, again, visit postureshift.com/proposal, submit a request for a proposal, and we'll send it to you. Now, importantly, we've got some parents that are on the call today. We've got some lay leaders that are on the call today, and you cannot request a proposal on behalf of your team. In other words, we're not going to have posture shift be pushed upon a leadership team that isn't ready. through its lay leaders or through parents. I understand your passion. I share your passion. But I want to be highly respectful, submissive to local leadership teams. So for the folks that request a proposal, you actually have to be on staff at a leadership. You have to be on staff at a church or a parachurch ministry. But anyway, action step number one, if you're ready to go, fill out that form and we'll send you all the proposal and pricing data and we can start to talk about dates. The second option is, this goes for anyone, be a courageous leader. You could purchase at special one-time prices 25 to 250 copies of Guiding Families on our website today in order to equip your entire team. Everyone should be reading Guiding Families. It's for every pastor, every parent, and all who care for LGBT people. So we really encourage that. Our theme, our vision theme for 2019 is the year of courageous leadership. This is the year when we really begin to start to create a new church history that has never existed. And in order to do that, we're going to have to rapidly equip entire leadership teams. So again, Guiding Families is available at special prices to allow you to do that. If you're not ready to move forward, and maybe you do order Guiding Families, but you want to explore more around postureship, you can order our course handbook online today. You can maybe order multiple copies for your team. You all could read through it, look at the curriculum, and then decide, is this a training that we want to pursue? So at this point, it's 3:01. So I have dishonored folks' time by 1 minute. And so I'll turn it over to Meg to say our final farewell. And then just know again that we're available. You can fill out the form for a proposal. If you want to reach us by email, you can email us at info@leadthemhome.org. We'll make sure we send folks that request a copy, a PDF of some of the information that I've presented today. So thank you. It's an honor to have spent this time with you. Meg.
Yeah, as Bill said, thank you all so much for your time today. I know there's a few questions we didn't get to. We have the names and email addresses of those people. So we'll plan to follow up with those questions. The link for the proposal is to the right in the chat window. That's leadthemhome.org/proposal. That link will also be listed in our follow-up email. If anyone else needs links, feel free to email us at info@postureshift.com. That goes for any other questions as well. Our next webinar is going to be in April. We encourage you to invite any other colleagues who might benefit. And with that, we'll go ahead and close out the webinar. We look forward to the opportunity to serving you all and your teams in the future, and hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you.